Oh, we all come into this world crying, but it doesn't mean that we're weak, it just means we're alive. Yeah, we're alive. Oh, somewhere, somehow we all learn to hide it. Don't show the fire in your soul, just keep it inside. Yeah, keep it inside. Oh, hiding away in the darkness. Oh, but the sunlight, it fights to get in. Break down the walls that I built for myself. I'm so vulnerable, I wanna let go. I surrender. I'm tired of fighting the demons inside me forever. The defender, I will lay down my arms, throw my hands up and say I surrender. Surrender. We all feel pain in this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Ariel Silver. I am the program manager over at the SONA Foundation. We are a nonprofit 501c3 charity founded by songwriters for songwriters, and we have programs supporting songwriters and music creators of all kinds in mental health, financial wellness, and career development. This is our monthly Fireside Chat series in partnership with our friends over at Backline. And Tara Lopez, in one moment, will come on screen and tell you a little bit about Backline. But I am just here to welcome you and say thank you for being here. Let us know in the chat where you're coming in from. And if you are watching after this broadcast and not already on our mailing list, you can join us and find out all about these monthly fireside chats, as well as our other programs and events, virtual, in person, all of that stuff over at our website, sonafoundation.com. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to bring Tara Lopez on right now. Where are you, Tara? There you are. Hi, Tara. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ariel?
I'm very good. I just love the series, as you and I are always gushing about after the conversations, and really looking forward to hearing where this conversation goes, and just grateful to have you and the Backline team with us today.
We love these conversations. These are seriously the highlight of my month. So always very grateful and honored to be a part of these.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm going to pull myself off screen and let you take it away. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Thank you so much. I'm seeing some folks put in where they're tuning in from the chat. Please feel free. As you know, Ariel is going to be moderating the chat box. So if you have any questions throughout this hour, please feel free to throw them in. We'll try to get to them. I'm Tara Lopez. I'm the community manager and head of artist partnerships at Backline. And as you all probably know, and if you don't, Backline's a resource hub for the music industry. And we provide free mental health and wellness resources for music industry professionals and their family members. And every month we team up with the SONA Foundation for some very insightful chats with songwriters. With the intersection of mental health and songwriting. And today's chat is all about caregiving, the emotional, the mental, the physical toll that caregiving can be, and also, trying to balance your creative life along with it. And so today we have some very special guests. We have Joshua Hill, a multi-instrumentalist and composer, winner of a Canadian Screen Awards for the Academy Award nominated film The Breadwinner for co-writing the song The Crown Sleeps. His award-winning work includes a series of performances highlighting firsthand the benefits of music for people with dementia in order to bring therapeutic music services to individuals with dementia and their families. I'm very, very excited to talk to Joshua about that important work. We also have Melissa Axel, a story-driven lyricist, songwriter, and creative producer for the stage and screen. Melissa has worked with everyone from Disney legend Alan Menken, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast concerts at the Hollywood Bowl, mini musicals all over LA, and award-winning live action and animated shorts. And lastly, as always, we have Backline Clinical Director Ari Jacobson. Ari is a crucial team member at Backline and is instrumental in growing Backline's clinical referral network. And he does so much more. So let's get everyone into the chat. Hey, everyone. Hey, Melissa. Hey, Joshua. Hey, Ari. Thank
Hello.
you
Hi,
all
everyone.
so much. Thank you all so much for joining today and for, I'm just going to say it ahead of time, for your vulnerability, for your honesty, especially on a topic that I think a lot of folks, a lot of us in the industry in general, and can resonate with. And so I like to start these conversations off with a first thought. How is everyone doing today? Melissa, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm actually doing really well, and I'm really grateful to be able to say that after quite the journey. And there are still ups and downs, but I'm happy to be in a very good place at the moment. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Joshua. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've actually spent a few weeks. I'm in just north of New York City in Croton-on-Hudson. I'm house sitting for a friend here, so I haven't been in this much trees and rain so long, and my body's like, what is this water? It's amazing. So I'm very happy to be here today. So thank you for having us.
That sounds beautiful. Ari, what about you? How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. This is one of my favorite parts of the month. So just honored and excited to just be a part of another good conversation.
I love that. Well, let's kick off the conversation. Melissa, Joshua, I'd love to hear about your caregiving experience, whether it's happening now, currently happening, or something that, what was in your past. How did your caregiving experience begin? We'll have Joshua start.
Okay. So I started caregiving for my father, Greg, in 2020. He was diagnosed with dementia in March 2020. Kind of a strange time for my reality. It's like, where's my dad? Where's the world? It's kind of a crazy few months or years. But basically, he ended up passing away last summer in June. And so I was living kind of between Los Angeles and Flagstaff, Arizona, which is where my mom and dad were living. And I was back and forth between LA and Flagstaff for about 3 years. And then I moved back to Flagstaff full time for about 8 or 9 months. Once we moved him into a memory care home. And then I was kind of with my mom being, kind of caregiver for him. And so that was really his death kind of marked the end of me having the responsibility as a caregiver, but I'm very much, it has shaped where I am and what I'm doing now. We'll start there.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Melissa, what about your experience?
Yeah, I would say that it is a past experience, but at the same time, I definitely still feel it. Like sort of once a caregiver, always a caregiver, but also I'm still overseeing my mom's care. She's in assisted living not too far away in California. But it really all started in 2017. My spouse and I were going to visit my parents, and it was like, oh, my dad is not doing well. He's had Parkinson's for a few years, but there's other complications, kidney stuff. There was a hospital stay. At the end of that week, we rushed to just move them out here, get them into an apartment, both my parents. And my mom, has had a lot of health issues off and on, and my dad was her caregiver. And then she spent a lot of time caring for us. So we're all caregivers at some point. But fast forward to 2020, similar story. Here we are on the precipice of a pandemic. My mom got sepsis at the end of January. they stuck the swab up, and I was like, what are they doing? They were checking for COVID. So she was hospitalized for quite some time. We fought for quite a while about what kind of rehab she should go to. Sparing the details, that started just multiple years of an absolute extravaganza of each of them in and out of the hospital repeatedly, getting them moved into assisted living eventually, and then my father eventually passing away from the complications of decline from Parkinson's in the end of 2022. And then my mom having 2 more surgeries since then, and now cataract surgery this past month. So it's been quite we never do anything half-assed in this family. And then my spouse and I each had surgery in the last 6 months as well. So it's
Wow.
just been quite the party. But yeah, I will say now, I feel more that I'm overseeing my mom's care. I'm helping my spouse with sort of the long distance, lending a hand with his mom, and she's in South Florida where we grew up. We're both from the Northeast, so we're all over the place, but we are based in LA and starting to feel like we've actually re-entered the industry and society here again after a long haul.
I mean, that is a lot of what you said really resonated. Once a caregiver, always a caregiver. I also was a caregiver for my father-in-law for a year and a half while he battled glioblastoma, brain cancer, and unfortunately passed. So while also juggling a job, multiple jobs, and music as well. So I absolutely understand the levels of all of this and of this experience, and how even once that full caregiving process is over, there's still so much more that goes into it. And we're definitely going to talk about that because I think a lot of folks can really resonate. I'd like to ask Joshua and Melissa, during the experience of caregiving, and what were some of the unexpected challenges going into this that you experienced?
I don't have an answer, but I'll just start answering.
Feel free.
I think actually, okay, now thoughts are coming. I think that it's hard to find people who have really been where you've been. And when it comes specifically to memory loss, I was in another kind of artist group talking about dementia like the last few weeks, and one thing they were saying is like, when you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. But if you've been through the process of caring for someone who has that disease specifically, then you just have this like language and this understanding that other people in your community just may not be able to help you with. Whereas if you were to have, just anyone taking care of somebody with a specific illness, it's like you go through a journey that's just unique to that illness. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to like find community that can really understand what you're going through. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there's other unexpected challenges as well, but I think that's really the biggest one for me, is just how unique that experience is, because it really messes with your reality. And then you're kind of just trying to like navigate life, but then the person just it's like they're there, but then they show up in fragments, and your whole grounding for like where you came from gets challenged. But then that person is still there, and you still have a relationship with them, and so there's still so much that's available and so much richness that an experience of caregiving can give you. But yeah, we'll stop there for now.
Surprises. I wish I could say I was surprised by some of these things, and yet somehow I don't know that I was. Hearing about the experience of caring, particularly for your parents, for elderly loved ones who raised you, it's like getting messages from across the dead. Like that, like you hear, you'll have to parent your parent. You become the parent of your parent. Um, there's, and that's, whoa, is that true? And at the same time, it's nothing like what you might imagine that to be. I mean, you're parenting an adult being who, whether they're fully there or not, have opinions, have desires, take action still, and they are communicating as an adult, even if they are childlike in many ways now. They say that the older you get, the more childlike you become again, but it's not quite the same. I'm not a parent of children. I never had that in my plan, or my spouse's plan. But I've looked after and been adjacent to many children, and they're dependent on you in a completely different way, and so they just don't have the agency that an adult care recipient, particularly one who parented you, has in any given situation. Um, I had a second thought. Well, okay. One another thing is that there's a lot of conversation on the internet, which is, I guess, the place most people go looking for some kind of camaraderie or advice, or commiserating, because there isn't a lot of discussion in person, certainly not amongst the entertainment community, although more now, more in the last 2 years. But one of the things that's talked a lot about there is how people deal with guilt. They are sure they're doing enough. Are they doing a good enough job? They feel guilty about not feeling good about doing this or being forced into it. I never had a problem with guilt, but I sure had a problem with anger, resentment. And I don't know if that's because my parents raised me to be such an independent, strong minded, make stuff, lead stuff. You don't have to be a nurturer. You don't want to have kids, don't have kids. And you'll see, my pronouns there, I officially changed them during the caregiving experience to just my first name, or singular they, because I got told so many times, oh, you're the daughter. You'll do this, you'll do that, you'll need to this for her and that for him. The daughter will do it. She'll do it. I'm like, you look at me and you see long hairs, no makeup, and boobs that aren't flat. And so you've assigned me an entire role with a whole slew of expectations. And all of these medical staff and care staff think I work for them and not the other way around, like we're paying them. Anyway, that's the rant of the day. But I think I really realized that well, I have watched many male friends go through this and, care for loved ones, and the specific challenges that brings. There's just a lot of genderization in care in general, and particularly, it's just sort of expected that I would drop my career, and my parents never wanted that for me. That was the heartbreaking thing. It's like they literally would tell me, like, hopefully you won't be burdened with anything with us financially, physically, logistically, and they did not get their wish. So, we all got the surprise that it turned
Yeah.
into much more of a snowstorm than any of us ever expected.
I just have to say, when preparing for this conversation, August will be 2 years since my father-in-law passed away, and I am still finding myself processing the situation, and the entire process. And to be quite honest, I think I really had to suppress a lot of it after the year after, just because of what y'all were both saying. There's so much. It's such a big experience, and I think unless you've been in it, it's very, at least for me, it's very tough to try to articulate the many emotions, the many feelings, and like you were saying, Melissa, the guilt, the anger, the resentment, and then the gender aspect of it, because I definitely did experience that as well, my partner and I. Ari, I'd love to ask you, in your experience, what are some of the emotional challenges you have found folks experience during this heavy time?
Sure. I want to first start off by just, Tara, Melissa, Josh, you are incredibly strong and incredible people for having managed through all of this. My wife has spent years working in memory care units, inpatient oncology units. She's currently a nurse practitioner in a hospice care unit. And the amount of people who don't care for their family members or don't take on that responsibility and just kind of leave it be are more than you may ever imagine. So the work that you have done either voluntarily or because it has fallen onto you, but the fact that you have accomplished this and continue to even process it is nothing short of incredible. So if there's one piece of credit to know that you have done this, is just something I at least had to start off by mentioning, because so many people just put it off to the side or pawn it off on somebody else. Um, to answer your question, Tara, you find that a lot of people going through this stress, you're kind of creating a whole new life. There's a new identity that suddenly is being created for you. So you may have been this music industry professional who has toured, who has performed, who maybe you're a different person on stage than you are at home, and like that's kind of a different identity for you in and of itself. But now you're suddenly this caretaker, and as Melissa said, like there's not always a way to do it, and there's not a manual. Every one of these situations, every person you'll ever care from is going to need something more specific or something different. So you're managing this dual identity or third identity or 100th identity that you did not necessarily willingly want to or request to take on. There's also, actually, Melissa, you just mentioned this too, the isolation and just invisibility of this stuff, especially while you're on the road. It's not always the most common situation where you're going to mention everything that's going on for you back at home, or that you're even going to talk about your life at home. So suddenly there's this separation, even if you're local, where it's a part of your life that people also tend to feel some shame around, as if we've done something wrong, when that's not really the case. Or in some situations, you're managing something that has been a result of somebody's decisions, and you're trying to navigate kind of that stress too. And just finally, with all this, no matter the situation, and it's the thing that my wife has kind of explained is really the biggest factor for how people respond, is the anticipatory grief. Some people have never experienced major losses in their lives. Some people have experienced way too much loss in their lives, and this is just another one that could be problematic, or it's a problem that it's not bothering you. How you manage that anticipatory grief could really impact you in so many different ways, that you see it so commonly with people just trying to understand, like, how am I feeling, and am I responding the way that I feel like I should be responding? Yeah, that way I actually feel like I should be responding.
Whew, yes, all of those things, Ari. As you're saying them, memories are just popping up of my own personal experience. Melissa and Joshua, I'd like to ask you, did y'all, during this experience, were you able to create? Were you able to write songs and put energy into that? Because my personal experience, I stopped touring. I had to, out of logistical reasons of just being able to care and be there for my partner and the family. But I'm wondering, did y'all feel like you had the mental capacity and the energy and the desire to create during that time?
Yeah, that's a very interesting phenomenon. That I had it in my mind that I was derailed from my career. It was completely stalled. Everything I was just launching into was just thwarted. But in the past year or so, I've been applying for a lot of artist residencies, writer opportunities, things to put on, have your work performed in a concert, grants. And I put a reel together for the first time. I had been just about to do that before all this really hit the fan.
Mm.
And I look at this reel, and like it has three different sections. There's pop, rock, contemporary. There's musical theater. There's animation, children and family. Then there's videos. There's the stuff I did before, all the credits. And I had completely rewritten my bio. And I was like, whoa, these were oddly productive years given what was going on and how all encompassing, overwhelming, and deeply immersing that work was. I used to say I produce, I'm also a producer of those bowl shows. I used to say I'm producing Project Shit Show, and I sure hope this TV, I hope this series gets canceled. Why does it keep getting renewed for another year? So, in looking at that, and then I listened again through all of those songs from those. Now I was, one at a time, here and there, different collaborators. I'm a lyricist, so I'm usually working with a composer or another songwriter who focuses on, melody and track production. And I would give, notes, but then I'm looking at the words I wrote. And if you look carefully, it's the entire journey. It's that story, but all tailored to what's the character thinking in this mini musical? What's this little animated pilot? What are these characters going through? They're trying to find friends. They're trying to feel less alone. They're trying to hold on to an identity that they feel is being robbed from them. They're in anticipatory grief. They're helping cheerlead a loved one through a tough time. They're determined to get up and go. It's all the range of emotions that my family and I, my spouse, my parents, and even my spouse's mom from afar, watching this situation and occasionally needing help herself, what we were all going through. And the few friends that were very close to us that, offered help or would check in on us regularly. There were a lot of people we just never heard from. Everybody was mired in their own pandemic or post-pandemic journey, but there were a handful who, the minute they realized what was happening, they would check on us very regularly. And they were privy to an inner circle of hell that when they look at those songs now and they're like, oh my goodness, you really made a lot of lemonade.
Joshua, were you able to create during this time, or did you need to kind of take a step back?
Well, yeah, so it's a great question. So I actually had a very surprising discovery the first time I went back to see my dad, because it was, pandemic times, so it was kind of tricky getting back to Arizona. But the first time I saw him, he was really depressed. And then I started asking him about some drums he had laying around. And then he just like lit up and he just started playing the drum. And without realizing it, he started like telling stories. And I was like, whoa, something's happening here. And then because I had seen other videos about music and dementia and how it just kind of like often you'll play familiar songs and it'll bring people back. Or Glenn Campbell, for instance, was able to tour long after his diagnosis. But what ended up happening with my dad is that we actually just started like making music together. And so we started kind of having like conversations through music. And once I was able to get him to sing, I was just like, it was so powerful, and it didn't always make like logical sense, but it was so rich in terms of what he was expressing emotionally. And so my caregiving journey with him really became when I would go home to caregive, and basically my mom would like take a trip somewhere else just to get a break, and then I just would set up the house like it was just like a film shoot and recording studio, and then we would just record and play music. And what we ended up, my dad was not a musician really. He did some drumming at some point, but basically his first performance was at Red Cat in the basement of Walt Disney Hall for like 250 people. He was improvising on stage with me. He got a standing ovation. It was this like really wonderful multimedia piece that we got into a festival there. And so that was my way of using my creativity to connect with him. Now, I mean, on top of that as well, I mean, I'm right now currently in this house. I'm working on some new recordings of songs I've written. I have like 15, 16 songs I've written over the last few years that are loosely inspired by just everything I've experienced the last few years. I think the creativity is there. It requires some time to process. And then the thing that I'm finally getting back is just the capacity to like actually think about, okay, I'm going to make a recording and then maybe perform again, maybe start figuring out how to tour. That's what went away when it's like there was always something that needed to get out. My mom started writing poetry. It was beautiful. Like, so I think that actually creativity is one of the most powerful tools for any type of caregiving experience. It just becomes tricky when you need to sort of enter capitalism, kind of make it all move forward. So, but I think that it's like whatever I gave up and I had to give up I chose to give up rather to go on that journey and to be there for my family. I just think I have a deeper well. I think I have more of a connection of who I am and what I want to say, and also just why, because I think one of the other unexpected surprises that I forgot to mention was just how kind of horrible a lot of the care situations are, and especially, we come from a fairly small town, and Flagstaff, and we did not have the support and resources we needed. And so that's become a pretty central part of what I'm trying to do. And what I think a lot of us who have been through those experiences is just like, well, let's just start talking about it. We can do better. But, with all of that creativity, I hope, if anyone's going through a caregiving situation and finding like they can't access it, it's like, just do something, it doesn't have to be perfect, write some words, do some painting, even go for a walk. Like, just, that's the stuff that's really going to get you through whatever you're facing.
Ari, I'd love to ask you how, for folks that are tuning in or who will watch this later, maybe going through this process, how can folks maintain their sense of self and their identity through this very daunting and overwhelming, all-encompassing situation?
Yeah. We've already kind of mentioned some of them, and a lot of it is about creating your own identity and creating your own role. So understanding that there are going to be times when you are acting as the caretaker role, and that can be hours out of a day, but that doesn't have to be your entire identity. So there still can be hours that you dedicate towards being a creative, towards being a musician. I'm a drummer, I'm a daughter, I'm a partner, I'm a whatever it might be. Really naming those roles and almost like scheduling them into your life so that way you don't forget about them is going to become increasingly more important, because as the person you're taking care of needs more attention, the thing that you're going to start to forget about is taking care of yourself. And so by scheduling those times into your own day, week, whatever it is going to be really, really important. And creating small creative rituals during that time. So things that are going to like allow you to throw out some lyrics, playing a couple riffs, put out something silly or less creative than you would ever publish, like something that's just going to get you feeling good about something that you're doing, not necessarily just to actually produce it, but just to know that you've created something. Like Josh, I know you were saying that some of the stuff wasn't even maybe very good, but like that's great. Sometimes like get all the bad stuff out. Like this can be your time to like let it all out. And then just with the same thing, like making sure that you're spending in your time, you're investing in non-caregiving activities. So whether that's, and ideally with like a community of people who maybe understand. So maybe you're joining a book club, you're in a jam band or you're in a group that's going to jam once a week and just play together. You are going to join a gym just so that way you have something scheduled where other people are also going to kind of rely on you, but not necessarily to be caretakers. So you can be welcomed into a community, but not responsible for the community.
I'd love to ask how big of a role, or what role did your community serve for you both during this time?
This is hard. I think, I don't know if this is just because of working in production. So basically music for film and television or live shows. Ari, you mentioned earlier, are people ashamed of this or going through this? I'm not sure if that's the word, but there's definitely this sense of hide it. People will not hire you. They will not think you're fully available or able to focus. Basically, there's a very strong sense of that person's been compromised. That person is compromised. And I knew that I was compromised. It took a while to face it, because it starts gradually sometimes. And sorry for the beeping fire alarm if you hear it. The smoke alarm wants batteries. It wants to be fed. But yeah, this so going to community, posting about it online, even just to like a small group of, the green feed, your private friends or whatever, or talking about it too much to, in entertainment, we're largely spending time with the people we're working with. So like those are your friends, your colleagues are your friends, your clients are your friends. you don't want to tell them too much and get, sort of inadvertently, I don't know if it's blackballed, but
Right.
is there a brown bald? Like they think you're just, changing diapers. I don't know. And I know that new parents, particularly new moms, go through this a lot. Like uh, composers who've become mothers, they're hiding their pregnancy. Going to music spotting sessions, trying to wear really baggy clothes while they're pregnant. And it's but in hindsight, or I don't know if it's hindsight or if it is that things are changing, and I'm just seeing more articles. And my spouse James and I were out there, doing advocacy work in DC and Sacramento and on Zooms, and just talking about sharing this experience, and sharing that we're part of the entertainment industry and we're not going anywhere regardless of what's going on. We're not going to be derailed. We're not going to be robbed of our futures or our present. But I just think maybe now, and now we're doing this, maybe we can start to talk about it more. I did finally go day job, I did a music research project at Disney Music Group, and it was full time, and they were starting to go back to the office. And sure enough, pretty early into that, I ran into someone who was like, I gotta leave, I gotta go take care of my mom.
Mm.
And, that person was 10 years older than me, but I was like, oh, we need to talk. I've been going through that. And, uh, so I think just the more we're brave, like with any other situation in life where people become sort of cast aside or marginalized in some way or compromised, that if we're brave and talk about it, we find those few people we can trust first, and then maybe whether it's once we're on the other side of it or even in the thick of it, we just sort of demand to be seen, demand to be heard, because we deserve it. This is the human experience. Every human is going to experience some variation of caregiving challenges, end of life challenges, new life challenges. Like this is the spectrum of a life well lived. It includes the exit chapter, you
Mm.
know,
Mm.
and that chapter should be honored and be special. And if anything, all that sort of resentment and rage I was feeling, like now a lot of that has dissipated. I got a lot of support from counseling through the entertainment community fund. If I had known about this, I certainly would have availed myself of it. And I did really track down a lot of support. That I know we were lucky to be here in LA, and we did get financial help and Medi-Cal, all that. I fought hard for it, but we got it in the end. But that somebody does know what you're going through. You are absolutely not alone. There's so many people, and so many of them are in California. Like from doing that advocacy work, like AARP has the numbers. Like the most people are here doing the caregiving, and we just can't lose that many people down a rabbit hole that they could never return from, and or to grief that they could never recover from. Like there needs to be more support.
Melissa, you bring up such a really great point in that in this industry, you really are kind of trained to hide whatever you're going through because there is that worry of losing out on opportunities and jobs and just having that kind of dark cloud over your head or whatever it is. This industry is go go go, and we talk about that often in these conversations. Joshua, did you find yourself feeling like you had to hide what you were going through, or were you able to be open to your community?
I think I just accepted the consequences. Like I think I realized maybe like 6 months ago, or maybe more, I just was like, oh, I don't think I have a career anymore. Like I just was like, like I just, whatever I was doing, I'm just like, I think I just have to restart. Because I chose to give it up, essentially. I mean, I left LA to go be with my dad. And that's where I was able to get work and build that network. And, I can go back and book myself for sessions. I'm a string player as well. And I can go back and do that. But as far as like really sinking my teeth in, I have to like really make a choice to like consciously like, okay, I gotta find a place to live. I gotta like get it. Like, it's just like this really big was kind of like in a groove. And I feel like once I was out of the groove, I don't know, I just kind of lost whatever momentum that as far as career goes. And I agree with that. It's like, yeah, community, it's no one's fault that that's how it is. And as far as the plus side of that is that I did have a lot of community come to me. And I've found it in like, being back in like my hometown. I just kind of got closer to like old friends, and they really showed up for me. And and actually it's really cool that just like in general, because it's a smaller town, we're kind of like we're doing a show in September that brings together like the local symphony and a memory care facility, and we just got funding, or a nonprofit. We helped them get funding to start a day program in Flagstaff, which is something we really needed. So like that community, we needed that, and like my family kind of helped plant some of those seeds to start growing stuff there. And so the hope is that, entering a more complicated, bigger place that like LA, that there is potential for that. And I actually left LA because I was going to these arts and health conferences. I'm part of the National Organization for Arts and Health, NOAA. Highly recommend it for anyone in this field. And I would go to the national conferences, and I would meet maybe a few individuals from LA, but I would meet no institutions, none. And I was just like, this is crazy. They're like, it's such a big city, but they're not part of this like national conversation about how healthcare institutions and art institutions can collaborate and find ways that those two things can support each other. And so I was like, there's nothing in LA. I need to move to New York. I need to move to Houston or Cleveland or where, like, it's like that. So I think that there's I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think there's a lot of people in LA doing this type of work. And I think it's just the sprawling nature of Los Angeles. It can be challenging to like bring together these different communities because all the caregivers are all over. They don't have time to be in traffic for 2 hours to go to some class or to meet for something. I mean, that's a really unique challenge to the city. And I don't know how to deal with that, but we can. It's good to start talking about it.
Definitely.
That all excites me very much. I'm like, that sounds like a challenge we should take on. It's funny because I think of like 4 or 5 organizations that have been really amazing and helpful, and that I'm still talking with. And I'm like, oh, if we just got these people together in a room or on a Zoom, the Zoom where it happens, like we could absolutely make something really special together and join with others, like it doesn't have to be just LA together. I think that, like you're saying, that being part of the national conversation is really important. That it's not the same everywhere. And I think that being able to adapt to the different needs of people in different places and ensure that everyone's needs, that we're moving towards meeting those needs and taking best practices from everywhere and being sort of on the lookout or watch for pitfalls that other places have experienced too is really valuable.
Ari, as we've been talking, and I feel like this conversation could go on for hours and hours because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what this experience entails. Ari, how big is community for individuals going through this? Because this experience can feel so siloed and can feel so isolating. What would you recommend to individuals either going through this or who will go through this? How can folks rely on their community or reach out to their community?
It's really hard because it can feel very isolating, and I don't want to pretend like everybody out there has access to very easy resources or even community. There are plenty of people out there who would love to find local supports, and as was mentioned, they just don't exist, or even finding a Facebook community of people seems overwhelming or not even something that they would benefit from. The biggest thing, community is important because it also helps you understand the things that you don't know. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what resources are out there in many cases until somebody might even point them in the right direction. So being able to find even just like local hospitals, local facilities that might even just have some aftercare resources, and you can call most of these hospitals and say, hey, memory care unit, do you have family resources? Do you have anything like that? Also, using resources like Backline or Music Cares and finding out what might just somebody might know of something to be able to point you in the right direction. The idea behind community is that it might not be easily accessible or right in front of you, but the likelihood is it does exist. And so it might just be about finding the community that also fits for you. And it doesn't also have to be a community that understands this exact situation. So like as I said before, like whether you joined a gym and you join a book club and now you just have people that again that you can rely on to also be there for you at times is going to help take some of that burden of always having to be there for somebody else. It's all about longevity because in these types of situations you may have a theoretical date as to when somebody might pass, but you really never know or what the stress of that timeline is going to look like. So being able to have other people still focusing on you that you can also rely on, even just to say like, hey, we go grab dinner or something, is just so incredibly important. And again, there are organizations out there that if people have nothing, they'll help connect you with things. There's a lot of stuff out there, and using these types of organizations are really going to be a great way to at least start.
Really important to remember that. And we'll make sure to share some of those links throughout the rest of the conversation, if possible. So we've talked a lot about the heaviness of this experience, which again, I feel like we barely scratched the surface there, but I'd love to hear more. Joshua, you kind of touched on it, the beautiful moments of being able to create with your father. But I'd love to hear, just some of the lighter moments or maybe some of the unexpected moments of learning, of love or of patience that you all were able to experience during this time.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm really talking through the lens of memory loss, that there's a really wonderful opportunity, like just I'm out here in New York. I'm spending a day at a memory care facility per week, just kind of spending time with the people there. And just a few days ago, somebody just started like they were kind of cycling through the same thing, but then what I realized is they said it like maybe 15, 20 times. But then they realized they were like telling me about like the spirit entering the body and how breath needs to come from like your solar plexus, and then it merges with your emotions, and then that's how you sing. And I'm like, I think I just learned how to sing. Like I think I just learned the lesson that I needed to get to understand this just really important lesson. And so through kind of taking care of my dad, I had so many of those moments. I really had some of the most fun I've ever had with him. Like we would just like dance to music, or we would just, we would play together, like play music together. We'd go on walks. Like it was really special. And it's like, even with all the hard stuff, where you're just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think I would do that. And then you're like, suddenly you're like, okay, I did that now. Okay. But then it's like you would do something like that, and then I would call my mom and she'd be like, yeah, it's pretty gross, huh? And then we would just like laugh about how awful it is to have to like go through something with just the like nature of our bodies, which can be really gross. So it's like there's just like a real there's gifts available, which might be really challenging to face, but it's almost like there's a real like spiritual deepening that happens through caregiving. And I think if you face it, it is really meaningful and beautiful, and if, as long as you can maintain that lightness and just know that this too shall pass, like it's just like, it's really special. And I would never have done anything different. And I think going through that I mean, I'm hoping my life isn't just caregiving after caregiving, but I'll, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the same, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and for the longest, I'm that person who's originating projects and coming up with ideas and fleshing them out. I'm not a long distance runner, I'm a sprinter. So to be day after day after day living in fear in a lot of ways, deep, deep fear and anger, and it is just that's no way to live. And at the same time, wow, am I strong? And the things I'm usually a very, very private person when it comes to my personal life, my emotions. I also tend to get commandeered into supporting others and helping them make their dreams a reality instead of focusing on mine. And I'm good at it. So it just keeps happening. But um, I, for whoever needs to hear it, like I will be candid and share, like, there are things I mentioned resentments. There are things I healed with my parents that I just don't know if it could have happened any other way.
Mm.
I said things to each of them that needed to be said and received, like knew those things were received and that they felt loved and I felt more fully loved by them and more fully supported by them for who I really am. I just don't know that it would have happened any other way other than to go through that hell. And, I mentioned my spouse and I both also had a surgery, which I won't get into, but like that stemmed from an accident that if we hadn't had that happen, I might not be alive today. They just caught some little weird thing and they were like, oh, guess what? You need heart surgery. And then several months of our lives, and then, all the recovery, it was just like focused on that after all we'd already been through with all these emergencies and hospital stays for my parents. It was like, and my spouse's mom. It's like, when is this ever going to end? But I will say that there does come a day where you're like, this isn't that life that I thought I would never have that became, it was like, you mentioned these different identities and try not to have only the one, right? That it's like you're stuck wearing the same set of clothes and you can never take them off or even put them in the laundry, like I want to be able to put something else on and, be someone else. And it just kept being like, you're never going to get out of that t-shirt and jeans. And in any case, there was a day where I took those clothes off that I had worn to the hospital day after day after day, that I had sat in a care facility or sat at my parents' apartment trying to manage their care and call the health insurance and all the stuff nonstop, more than full time. It was more than full time. I thought we lost so much money. I lost so much time. I'm not growing as a creator. I'm not growing as a leader. Nobody's hiring me. And yet I have such a wealth now to pull from. As you say, spiritually, I'm not religious, but just your soul, like what you feel, how much empathy you have for others, the situations you're aware of and their impact. Mentally, that rubber band got stretched so many times, it's so resilient. And physically, I'm a lot healthier now that my heart is fixed and I'm stronger, and I know, like, you can survive a lot more than you think you can. And that's not to say, hey, put up with it. That's just like, take care of yourself. Yes, find the quiet, dark room to sit in, listen to your music, take your bath, like, do whatever you can. Ask for help. Don't be afraid. Whatever, wherever it comes from. It might not be from your closest friend. It might not be from your family. It might be from somebody you met at a networking event a year ago that just happened to text you and you're like, I'm really in the shits right now. And they're like, hey, I'm going to bring you dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Take it from wherever you can get it and keep going. Live to fight another day, as my professor at Berklee College of Music, Livingston Taylor, would say. Just keep going. The only way out is through. And on the other side, I promise you are still there. The you want to be is there. It's always in here.
I mean, what a better way to end this conversation. Everything that y'all have said today really resonates. I agree. I think I faced so many of my fears in that experience. I was beforehand so afraid of death and of dying, and witnessing it and seeing the progression just was such a moving, beautiful experience. I do feel there is a depth to myself that I did not know could exist. It strengthened my relationship with my partner. It strengthened my relationship with my family, my extended family, and just now being 2 years removed from it, I am only now able to start to write songs about that experience. And it's, yeah, it took me a while to be able to say, but I do believe grief is such a gift. And I just really want to thank you all so much for being a part of this important conversation that I think, a lot of us unfortunately will have to experience, but just like you said, Melissa, the only way out is through. And I think really, really going through the experience, being open with those around you, if you can be, if you feel safe enough to be, is so important. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here and for your vulnerability and your honesty.
Thank you. This really means a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Nice to see you all today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Ariel, for throwing those links in the chat. I think that this is such an important conversation. And I think we're only now starting, especially within the music industry, of being able to admit that we're going through some of, these experiences, because like Melissa mentioned, it is really tough. You want to kind of have that exterior most of the time that I'm okay. I'm not going through, anything so serious. I can still work. And I think that these conversations are so, so important to just let others know, like, you're not alone. And that there's light at the end of this. And there is an end to it. I think that that's important also to remember.
Absolutely, Tara. That last part that you just said, don't we despair when, in so many circumstances, we twist our ankle and we think we'll never be able to walk again, and that's just, such a probably smaller event. And then, these bigger things that really take us on a journey that lasts for a while and really asks us to dig deep into our inner resources, or externally into our community resources. It is hard sometimes not to despair. Even it's not always that it's a despairing situation, but we're so attached to what we were attached to before. Just the change can be the catalyst, I guess, for some kind of despair. But right, what you're saying, these are phases of life, and we live through a lot of phases. And so this was such a beautiful conversation, because for example, when Joshua said, I think I learned how to sing that day. Moments like that. When my sweetheart's mom was near the end of her life, there were just these, it was a really, really tough time. However, there were these moments of extreme lightness, like extreme, one of the links I put in the chat was hilarity for charity. Thank you, Melissa, for providing that. But really that I'm thinking of some of these moments that were actually like really hilarious. And I was so grateful that my sweetheart got that time, that they were able to have those kinds of belly laughs together, even though, her memory was compromised and all of that stuff. Yeah.
I think, I loved having this conversation. It's not every day where you get to talk to others who have had this experience and be able to, just so many things that Melissa and Joshua said really resonated with, oh yeah, I felt that too, or I felt that way and I didn't know anyone else felt that way, and I think it really is a part of the human experience of just being able to share some of the toughest moments of your life and just know, like, okay, like, you understand. And what Melissa also said of, like, we can go through really, really difficult things, we can go through so much more than we actually realize. Not that
Right.
we want to or should, but unfortunately, that is a part of the human experience. And so I think just kind of knowing and realizing we are so much more resilient than I think we can ever imagine. And I definitely, that experience with my father-in-law has really, really shown me that. And I'm just so grateful for these conversations again of being able to share and learn. I learn something every
Yeah.
single time we have these.
Yeah, absolutely. You just said something which I think you're gonna agree with me, but I just honed in on one word that you said where you said, "Unfortunately, we go through these experiences," and, um, and we can't, I don't think, always live on the edge of what we're capable of. But these kinds of experiences show us that most of the time we don't live on those edges. We live somewhere in the middle of this spectrum of human experience. And when we have these relationships or these calls to action in our own lives that kind of push us out of that middle ground, maybe where we reside, not to say that we're all complacent in our lives. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that we build, especially as creatives, as songwriters and musicians, we build lives that are as stable as they can be because our careers are very not stable. They
Yeah.
are really you know I don't know. They ask a lot of us in weird ways, right? And so I think that we try to create some sense of stability in however we do that. In our homes, in our spiritual practices, in our self-care, whatever it might be. But then there are these moments that call us to reach beyond that, not just to be in the dangerous territory of writing a song about fraught experiences, but to actually go out and to live in a way, in some experience that takes us beyond our normal edge. And I guess what I'm thinking is that it's when we get to those edges, when we push beyond it, we are we are experiencing human experience, right? Like
Mm,
we are learning more about ourselves as humans and more about what it means to be human, I guess. And
absolutely.
that's so beautiful and
I
hard.
mean, it is hard. It's the hardest work I think that we can do.
Yeah.
But I personally have learned more during the toughest times of my life than any other.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we do have to remember. My father-in-law, while he was in hospice, kept talking about seasons of life. This is just a season, he kept telling us. And I have never forgotten that everything we
Mhm.
go through is a season, and it will change and it will pass. And I
And
think
isn't that uplifting and also heartbreaking, right? Like
yes,
to
yeah,
look
both
at things.
both of things, which I think you do have to hold in life,
Yeah.
that duality of heartbreak and joy. And I think, yeah, I just everything is a season, and it's so important to be able to see beyond what you are currently experiencing.
Mm.
So, yeah,
It's like we just go through life weeping and laughing and weeping and laughing and weeping and laughing and hopefully being held. And I think that that's what these fireside chats actually do, is that in some way they help us to hold each other. Both the like us, you, me, Ari, or whoever our
yeah,
clinical counselor is on the call, but also our guest songwriters who share their stories and their experiences, and then the folks that watch and tune in on the chat or watch it on the replay, because um, I really resonated with, I can't remember now if it was Joshua or Melissa who was talking about the black ball or the brown ball. I think it was Melissa.
yeah,
Um, but it really for a really long time, and still in many ways in the music industry, um, our personal lives and our professional lives are so blended in so many ways. Our friend circles, our colleagues, our colleagues are our friend, all of this stuff. And the reason these conversations are so powerful and important is because too often we kind of push them down, and we feel like there isn't a safe space to have these conversations. And yet I received so many emails in the lead up to this particular topic saying, hey, I've had this experience too. I can't wait for the conversation about it. I haven't heard people talking about this, that sort of thing. And when we do have these conversations, in a way, we are holding each other. We are saying, yes, we are songwriters. Yes, we are music creators, and, living in that musical dangerous territory. And also, let's just hold each other for a few minutes and talk about what it's like to be human.
I think it's so important because while we are songwriters, we also have this, we are also human. We have this full human experience, and we have to be full humans in order to be at our best. And I think for a very long time in the industry, I didn't really realize that. I just thought I could only be a songwriter and I just have to do this. But it's like, no, life still happens all around you. It doesn't stop. And so I'm slowly learning how to juggle both.
Yeah. And it informs our work because it informs us as humans, and our work is, music. What is music? It's like, we're like engaging with the spirit, like on a daily basis. What is that? Tara, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for this conversation. Thank you for so deftly leading it, and just helping the conversation, helping the stories come up. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this space and for hosting this space. And it's truly my favorite part of the month. So always grateful.
I will see you next time.
All right.
All right. And thank you all for being a part of it, for watching either live or in the replay. Thanks for chiming in on the chat. These are so special. We will be back next time, and make sure that you are subscribed to our SONA Foundation mailing list. You can find that on sonafoundation.com, and you'll get all the information, the link, and all that stuff. So until we see you next time, take good care.
We are coming to this world crying, but it doesn't mean that we're weak, it just means we're alive. Yeah, we're alive. Oh, somewhere, somehow we all learn to hide it. Don't show the fire in your soul, just keep it inside. Yeah, keep it inside.